Hannah Mitchell was already 15 minutes late for work when she spotted the elderly man hesitating at the crosswalk. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking through her thin jacket as she clutched her umbrella with one hand and her purse with the other. The morning rush-hour traffic of downtown Boston showed no mercy, cars speeding through puddles and splashing unfortunate pedestrians. Hannah checked her watch again, wincing at the time. Her boss, Victoria Winters, had already issued her final warning last week. 3 strikes and you're out, Hannah, Victoria had said, her crimson fingernails tapping impatiently on the desk. 1 more tardiness, and you can kiss this job goodbye. Hannah knew she should hurry past, pretend not to notice the old man's struggle, but something in his uncertain posture, the way his weathered hand trembled on his walking cane, made her pause. He wore an outdated but well-maintained tweed coat, and despite the rain had no umbrella. His white hair was plastered to his head, and his eyes squinted at the traffic signal as if trying to decipher a foreign language. "Excuse me, sir. Do you need help crossing?" Hannah asked, already knowing the answer would cost her dearly. The old man turned to her with pale blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "That would be most kind of you, young lady. These crosswalks seem to get more confusing every year." Hannah offered her arm and positioned her umbrella to shield them both. "I'm Hannah. Let's wait for the signal to change." "George," he replied simply. "George Peterson. Pleased to meet you." The crossing signal flashed white, and Hannah guided George carefully across the slick pavement. He moved slowly, each step deliberate, his cane tapping rhythmically. Halfway across, the light began flashing, warning of the impending change. A sleek black BMW honked impatiently, its driver gesturing rudely behind the wheel. "Take your time, George," Hannah said, glaring at the driver. "They can wait." When they reached the other side, George was breathing heavily. "Thank you, my dear. Not many people would stop these days." "No problem at all," Hannah replied, though her stomach knotted with anxiety. She was now 20 minutes late. "Do you need help getting anywhere else?" George shook his head. "No, I'm just headed to that little coffee shop on the corner. Been going there every Thursday morning for 20 years. "Well, enjoy your coffee," Hannah said, already backing away. "Have a good day." "Wait," George called after her. "At least let me buy you a coffee as thanks." Hannah hesitated. "I'm sorry, I really can't. I'm already late for work." George nodded understandingly. "Another time, perhaps. May I ask where you work?" "Winters Financial Services, just down the block," Hannah replied, pointing to the gleaming glass tower that housed the financial firm where she'd worked as an executive assistant for the past 3 years. "Ah," George said, his expression changing subtly. "I'm familiar with it. Well, don't let me keep you." By the time Hannah burst through the office doors, she was 25 minutes late and soaked from the knees down. She hurried past the reception desk, nodding apologetically to Tiffany, who gave her a sympathetic grimace and mouthed, "She's looking for you." Hannah had barely set her purse down at her desk when Victoria appeared, arms crossed and face set in a mask of cold displeasure. "My office now," Victoria said, turning on her heel without waiting for a response. Hannah's heart sank as she followed Victoria into the corner office with its panoramic views of the Boston skyline. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating a dramatic backdrop for what Hannah knew would be the end of her employment. 25 minutes late, Hannah," Victoria began, settling behind her immaculate desk. "After our conversation last week, I'm frankly astounded by your disrespect for company policy." "I'm sorry, Victoria, but there was an elderly man who needed help crossing the street in this downpour, and Victoria held up a manicured hand. "Save it. I don't need excuses. What I needed was for you to be at your desk at 8:30 sharp to prepare for the Morrison meeting." "I understand, but punctuality isn't just about following rules, Hannah. It's about reliability. When you're late, it affects the entire team. I had to ask Danielle to cover for you, pulling her away from her own responsibilities." Hannah bit her lip. She knew Victoria was right, but something inside her refused to regret helping George. "I made a judgment call. Someone needed help." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "And now you need to find another job. I'm sorry, Hannah, but your position requires dependability. I've given you multiple chances, and you've shown me your priorities lie elsewhere." The words hit Hannah like a physical blow. "You're firing me? For helping an old man cross the street? I'm terminating your employment for repeated violations of our attendance policy. Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks' severance. Please clear out your desk by noon." Hannah sat frozen, thoughts racing to her 6-year-old son Tyler and their apartment rent due next week, the private school tuition she'd scraped to pay every month, the orthodontist appointments, the grocery bills. "Victoria, please, I have a child to support. I can't lose this job," Hannah pleaded, hating the desperation in her voice. Victoria's expression softened marginally. "You should have considered that before consistently arriving late." "I'm sorry, Hannah, but my decision is final." 30 minutes later, Hannah stood on the sidewalk outside Winter's Financial Services, clutching a cardboard box containing her desk plants, family photos, and the emergency snack stash she kept for late work nights. The rain had stopped, but dark clouds still loomed overhead, threatening another downpour. She blinked back tears, refusing to break down in public. "What am I going to tell Tyler?" she whispered to herself, picturing her son's face. Sweet, sensitive Tyler with his missing front teeth and dinosaur obsession. The thought of disappointing him crushed her, more than losing the job itself. As if summoned by her thoughts, her phone rang. Tyler's school appeared on the screen. "Miss Mitchell, this is Nurse Jenkins at Brookside Elementary. Tyler had an incident during recess. He's okay, but he took a fall and has a sprained wrist. We've got him comfortable, but you'll need to come pick him up and take him for x-rays to be sure nothing's broken." Hannah closed her eyes briefly. "I'll be right there." The universe clearly had it out for her today. She hailed a taxi, the expense a luxury she could no longer afford but necessary in the crisis. As the cab navigated through traffic, Hannah tried desperately to formulate a plan. Her savings would cover about 2 months of expenses if she was extremely careful. She'd need to find another job immediately. At the school, Tyler's tear-streaked face brightened when he saw her. "Mom, I was playing Dinosaur Explorers and fell off the jungle gym. The nurse gave me ice cream." Hannah hugged him gently, careful of his bandaged wrist. "My brave explorer. Let's get you checked out, okay?" 3 hours and 1 expensive emergency room visit later, Hannah and Tyler returned to their apartment. Thankfully, nothing was broken, just a mild sprain that would heal in a couple of weeks. Tyler settled on the couch with his dinosaur collection, his wrist now sporting a blue brace he was already showing off proudly to his stuffed T-Rex. Hannah retreated to the kitchen, opened her laptop and began the dreaded job search. With each listing she read, the knot in her stomach tightened. Most required years more experience than she had, or degrees she'd never completed after becoming pregnant with Tyler during her sophomore year of college. A notification pinged on her phone, a reminder about tomorrow's parent-teacher conference. Another reminder that life didn't pause for personal disasters. Hannah rested her head in her hands, allowing herself 5 minutes of silent panic before straightening her shoulders. "Mom, I'm hungry," Tyler called from the living room. "Coming, sweetie." Hannah closed the laptop. There would be time for job hunting after Tyler was in bed. For now, she needed to be present for her son, to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. As she prepared Tyler's favorite mac and cheese, Hannah couldn't help wondering about George Peterson, the elderly man who had inadvertently cost her job. Had he enjoyed his coffee? Did he have family who cared for him? Was helping him worth the price she now had to pay? The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. "I'll get it," Tyler shouted, jumping up from the couch before Hannah could stop him. "Tyler, wait, check who it is first," Hannah called, hurrying after him. But Tyler had already flung the door open, revealing a tall man in an impeccable suit standing in the hallway. He looked to be in his 40s, with dark hair graying at the temples and sharp, assessing eyes that took in Tyler's dinosaur t-shirt and braced wrist before shifting to Hannah. "Hannah Mitchell?" he asked, his voice deep and authoritative. "Yes," Hannah replied cautiously, pulling Tyler protectively to her side. The man extended his hand. "My name is James Peterson. I believe you met my father this morning." Hannah stared at James Peterson, momentarily speechless. The connection between the elderly man she'd helped and this imposing figure in her doorway seemed impossible, yet there was something in the shape of his eyes that reminded her of George. "May I come in?" James asked, his tone businesslike but not unfriendly. Hannah hesitated, her protective instincts flaring. "How did you find my address?" A flicker of something, embarrassment perhaps, crossed James's face. "I admit that wasn't entirely above board. My father mentioned Winter's Financial and I made some inquiries. I understand you were terminated from your position today." Tyler tugged at Hannah's sleeve. "Mom, What does terminated mean? It means I'm taking a break from that job, honey, Hannah said gently, then turned back to James with narrowed eyes. I don't appreciate being investigated, Mr. Peterson. James nodded. Understandable. I apologize for the intrusion, but my father was quite insistent that I track you down. He was quite moved by your kindness this morning. The mac and cheese began to bubble over on the stove and Hannah sighed. Fine. Come in. I need to save our dinner. As James stepped inside their modest apartment, Hannah was acutely aware of the stark contrast between his immaculate appearance and their lived-in home. Dinosaur toys littered the living room floor, a basket of unfolded laundry sat on the couch, and the walls badly needed a fresh coat of paint. Yet James showed no reaction as he carefully navigated around Tyler's prehistoric landscape. This is Tyler, Hannah said, rushing to the kitchen to remove the pot from the heat. Tyler, this is Mr. Peterson. Do you like dinosaurs? Tyler asked immediately, holding up his prized T-Rex figure. To Hannah's surprise, James knelt down to Tyler's level, examining the dinosaur with apparent interest. I do. When I was about your age, I wanted to be a paleontologist. What's that? Tyler asked, wide-eyed. A scientist who studies dinosaur fossils, James explained, then glanced at Tyler's wrist brace. That looks like a serious injury. What happened? As Tyler launched into his animated tale of jungle gym adventures, Hannah dished out 2 bowls of mac and cheese, watching the unexpected interaction from the kitchen. There was something almost wistful in the way James listened to her son, a softening around his eyes that contrasted with his otherwise rigid demeanor. Would you like some mac and cheese, Mr. Peterson? Hannah called, surprising herself with the offer. James straightened up, seeming to remember his purpose. No, thank you, and please, call me James. I won't take up much of your evening. I came because my father asked me to offer you a job. Hannah nearly dropped the bowls she was carrying. Excuse me? A job, James repeated. At Peterson Innovations. Hannah set the bowls on the coffee table and gestured for Tyler to eat. What exactly is Peterson Innovations? She asked, though a faint memory stirred. She'd seen the name in business news, something about sustainable technology. We're a technology development company focused on environmental solutions, James explained, remaining standing while Hannah took a seat, currently valued at just over $11 billion. The casual way he dropped this information made Hannah blink. And your father suggested you hire me because I helped him cross the street? That seems excessive. A ghost of a smile touched James's lips. My father has always been eccentric, but he's also an excellent judge of character. He said you chose helping him over keeping your job. That kind of integrity interests me. Hannah shook her head in disbelief. I appreciate the thought, but I'm not a charity case, Mr. Peterson. James, I don't need handouts. This isn't charity, James countered smoothly. We have an immediate opening for an executive assistant in our community outreach division. Based on your experience at Winters Financial, you're qualified. The salary is 20% higher than what you were making, with better benefits and flexible hours to accommodate your parenting responsibilities. The offer was too perfect, too convenient. Hannah's natural skepticism flared. And what's the catch? James raised an eyebrow. Why must there be a catch? Because billionaires don't usually show up at my door offering dream jobs out of nowhere, Hannah replied flatly. Tyler looked up from his dinosaurs. What's a billionaire, Mom? Someone with a lot of money, sweetie. Keep eating. James studied her for a moment. No catch. Though I should mention the position reports directly to me, and I have high expectations. My father may think you're a saint for helping him, but I'll be judging you solely on your professional performance. Hannah crossed her arms. And if I say no? Then I wish you luck in your job search, James said simply. But I'd encourage you to at least consider it. Come to our offices tomorrow at 10 for a proper interview. See the facilities, meet the team, then decide. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a business card, which he placed on the coffee table. The embossed logo gleamed under the living room light. Mum, can I have more cheese? Tyler interrupted, holding up his empty bowl. Of course, honey. Hannah took his bowl to the kitchen, giving herself a moment to think. The offer was suspicious in its perfection, yet she couldn't afford to dismiss it outright. With Tyler's school expenses and their rent, turning down a legitimate job opportunity would be foolish. When she returned, James was checking his watch. I should go. My father has invited us both to lunch on Saturday. He's quite determined to thank you properly. I haven't agreed to anything yet, Hannah reminded him, setting Tyler's refilled bowl down. The lunch invitation stands regardless of your decision about the job, James clarified. My father rarely takes such an interest in strangers. I admit, I'm curious to see what he finds so compelling about you. There was something in his tone, a subtle challenge perhaps, that made Hannah's spine stiffen. Tell your father thank you, but I'm busy on Saturday. James tilted his head slightly. Are you always this stubborn, Ms. Mitchell? Hannah, she corrected. And yes, especially when mysterious billionaires and their sons start meddling in my life. To her surprise, James laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face. Fair enough. The interview offer remains open. Tomorrow at 10 if you change your mind. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, my father rarely misjudges people. If he thinks you're special, there's likely something to it. After James left, Hannah collapsed onto the couch, mind racing. Tyler climbed into her lap, smelling of cheese and the grape medicine from the hospital. Is that man going to give you a new job, Mom? He asked, nestling against her. I don't know, honey, Hannah answered truthfully. It's complicated. He seemed nice, and he likes dinosaurs. Hannah smiled despite herself. High praise indeed. After getting Tyler bathed and tucked into bed with 3 bedtime stories and his dinosaur nightlight glowing softly, Hannah researched Peterson Innovations online. What she found left her breathless. The company was indeed worth billions, pioneering breakthrough clean energy technologies. And James Peterson was its CEO and founder, featured in Fortune magazine just last month. Further searching revealed more about George Peterson. Before retirement, he'd been a respected environmental scientist, laying the groundwork for many of the technologies his son had commercialized. There were surprisingly few personal details about either man, though one article mentioned James was divorced with no children. Hannah's phone pinged with a text message from an unknown number. The interview is just that, an interview. No guarantees, but I hope you'll come. JP. How had he gotten her number? The same way he'd found her address, presumably. Hannah should have been unsettled by this invasion of privacy, but instead found herself intrigued. There was more to James Peterson than the wealthy businessman stereotype. Another text arrived. My father also insists you bring Tyler. Apparently they have a shared interest in paleontology. Hannah set her phone down, conflicted. Everything about this situation screamed caution, yet she couldn't deny the practical benefits of the opportunity. A better-paying job with flexible hours would transform their lives. But what did the Petersons really want from her? Why had a chance encounter with an elderly man at a crosswalk led to this? There had to be more to the story. The next morning, Hannah woke early, her decision made. She'd go to the interview, if only to satisfy her curiosity. She helped Tyler dress in his least dinosaur-covered shirt, explained they were going on an adventure, and caught a bus downtown. Peterson Innovations occupied the top 10 floors of a sleek tower overlooking the harbor. In the gleaming lobby, a security guard checked her ID and directed her to the executive elevator. Tyler pressed the button for the 45th floor with excitement, oblivious to his mother's nervousness. Welcome to Peterson Innovations, the receptionist greeted them warmly. Mr. Peterson is expecting you, both of you, she added with a smile for Tyler. They were led through an open workspace filled with plants and natural light, past curious glances from employees, and into a large conference room with panoramic views of the city. James was waiting, dressed in another impeccable suit, reviewing documents at the head of the table. He looked up as they entered, his expression unreadable. You came, he said simply. I'm glad. Before Hannah could respond, the conference room door opened again and George Peterson entered, supported by a carved wooden cane far more elegant than the one he'd used yesterday. There she is, George exclaimed warmly. The kindest young lady in Boston. His gaze fell on Tyler. And who might this young man be? Tyler stepped forward confidently. I'm Tyler Mitchell. I'm 6½. Do you really know about dinosaurs? George chuckled. I know a thing or two. Perhaps I could show you my collection sometime. James cleared his throat. Father, we have an interview scheduled. Interview? George waved his hand dismissively. Nonsense. I've already made up my mind. He turned to Hannah with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. There's something I need to tell you about yesterday morning, my dear. You see, it wasn't entirely by chance that we met. Hannah stared at George, a chill running through her. What do you mean it wasn't by chance? George settled into a chair, gesturing for Hannah to do the same. Tyler had already gravitated toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, pressing his nose against the glass to gaze at the boats in the harbor below. "Tyler, stay where I can see you, please," Hannah called, reluctantly taking a seat opposite George. James remained standing, arms crossed, his expression giving nothing away. "I've been watching Winters Financial for some time now," George began, his kindly demeanor suddenly tinged with something sharper, more calculating. "Victoria Winters has quite the reputation in Boston business circles." "Father," James warned, "perhaps we should conduct the formal interview first." George waved him off. "Interviews are for people you don't know, son. I already know Ms. Mitchell has exactly the qualities we need." Hannah's unease grew. "You've been watching the company? Why?" "Because Victoria Winters stole from me," George stated matter-of-factly. 20 years ago, she and I were partners in an environmental research venture. She orchestrated a rather elaborate scheme to push me out and take control of several key patents. Patents that would be worth billions today. Hannah's mouth fell open. "Victoria was your business partner?" "Indeed, though partner implies a certain level of trust that was clearly misplaced." George's eyes darkened momentarily before the twinkle returned. "Water under the bridge now. I've done quite well despite her treachery." James moved to the window, gently redirecting Tyler from pressing fingerprints on the glass. To Hannah's surprise, he produced a small model dinosaur from his pocket and handed it to her son, who accepted it with wide-eyed delight. "What my father is failing to explain," James said, turning back to Hannah, "is that he orchestrated yesterday's meeting." Hannah's eyes narrowed. "The crosswalk? That was a setup?" Her cheeks flushed with anger. "So I lost my job because you decided to use me in some decades-old revenge scheme?" George had the grace to look slightly abashed. "I merely wanted to observe Victoria's organization from the inside. When I saw how she treated her employees, particularly you, a single mother working twice as hard as anyone else there, it confirmed everything I suspected about her character." "You could have just introduced yourself," Hannah exclaimed. "Instead, you let me lose my job." "A job that was already hanging by a thread from what I gathered," George pointed out gently. "Victoria was looking for an excuse. I simply provided one that revealed her true nature." Hannah stood up, reaching for Tyler's hand. "This is ridiculous. I'm not interested in being a pawn in your corporate chess game." "Please, hear me out," George said, his voice suddenly serious. "What began as simple curiosity evolved when I saw how Victoria treated you. My intention was never for you to lose your position." James stepped forward. "The job offer is legitimate, Hannah. We do need an executive assistant in community outreach. Your qualifications are excellent. Father's unorthodox methods aside, this could be beneficial for everyone involved." Hannah hesitated, torn between indignation and practical necessity. "And what exactly would this job entail, besides being caught in whatever feud exists between your father and my former boss?" "No feud," James clarified. "At least, not an active one. My father merely has a dramatic streak and an excess of free time in his retirement." He shot George a pointed look before continuing. "The position involves coordinating our educational initiatives, managing relationships with environmental nonprofits, and assisting with our community grant program. Given your organizational skills and people-centered approach, you'd be ideal." Tyler tugged at Hannah's hand. "Mum, look at this dinosaur. It's a triceratops." "Yes, honey, very nice," Hannah said distractedly. George leaned forward. "I understand your hesitation, but consider this. Victoria discarded you without a second thought for an act of kindness. What does that say about her company culture? Would you really want to continue working there even if you could?" Hannah had to admit George had a point. Victoria's callousness had always bothered her, but she tolerated it for the sake of a steady paycheck. "I need to think," Hannah said finally. "This is all too—" She was interrupted by the conference room door swinging open. A striking woman in her early 30s entered, carrying a tablet and looking slightly harried. "James, I've been looking everywhere for—" She stopped short at the sight of Hannah and Tyler. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were in a meeting." James nodded toward the newcomer. "Hannah, this is Megan Walsh, our current Community Outreach Director. Megan, this is Hannah Mitchell, who's considering the executive assistant position." Megan smiled warmly, extending her hand. "Wonderful to meet you. We've been short-staffed for months. I hope you'll join us." Hannah shook Megan's hand, noting her genuine enthusiasm. "I'm still deciding." "Mom, I'm hungry," Tyler announced, the new dinosaur clutched tightly in his hand. "Perfect timing," George declared. "I've arranged for lunch to be served in my private dining room. Megan, you're welcome to join us. Perhaps you can give Ms. Mitchell a more objective perspective on working here." As they followed George through the sleek corridors of Peterson Innovations, Hannah noticed something odd. Nearly every employee they passed greeted George with genuine affection, many stopping to chat briefly or inquire about his health. This was no feared tyrant or cutthroat businessman. These people genuinely liked him. The private dining room turned out to be a sunlit conservatory atop the building, filled with lush plants and a spectacular view of the city. A table had been set with elegant simplicity, and a buffet of child-friendly foods awaited them. "I took the liberty of ordering some dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets," George told Tyler with a conspiratorial wink. "My sources tell me they're a favorite of yours." Tyler gasped with delight. "How did you know?" "Thorough research," James muttered, catching Hannah's eye with a hint of apology. Throughout lunch, Hannah observed the interactions between the Petersons. Despite their obvious wealth and power, there was something refreshingly unpretentious about them. George told entertaining stories that had Tyler giggling, while James discussed the company's latest projects with Megan. Hannah found herself relaxing despite her initial misgivings. "So, Megan," Hannah said during a lull in conversation, "how long have you worked here?" "5 years," Megan replied. "Best decision I ever made. The work-life balance is incredible. I have twin boys, and I've never missed a school event or doctor's appointment." "And the Petersons?" Hannah pressed quietly. "What are they really like as bosses?" Megan glanced at James, who was engrossed in helping Tyler construct a dinosaur scene with the food on his plate. "Demanding but fair. James expects excellence, but he also rewards it. And George, well, everyone loves George. He's officially retired, but he still drops by regularly, bringing cookies and dispensing advice." After lunch, Megan offered to show Hannah the community outreach offices, while James and George entertained Tyler with promises of the dinosaur room, apparently George's office, which housed part of his fossil collection. "I'll bring him right back," James assured Hannah, correctly interpreting her hesitation at being separated from her son. The Community Outreach Department occupied half of the 43rd floor, an open, collaborative space filled with natural light and plants. Staff members worked at adjustable desks, some standing, some sitting on exercise balls. A corner was dedicated to a small kitchen and lounge area where several employees were engaged in animated conversation. "We believe in creating healthy work environments," Megan explained. "Flexible hours, remote work options when needed, on-site childcare." "On-site childcare?" Hannah couldn't hide her surprise. Megan nodded. "On the 40th floor. State-of-the-art facilities, certified teachers, and it's free for employees. James implemented it 3 years ago after I came back from maternity leave and struggled with traditional daycare arrangements." The tour continued, each revelation making the opportunity seem more perfect and more suspicious. What was the catch? There had to be one. When they rejoined the others, Hannah found Tyler animatedly explaining dinosaur facts to George, who listened with exaggerated amazement. James stood slightly apart, watching the interaction with an unreadable expression. "Did you know T-Rexes had feathers?" Tyler was saying. "They weren't scaly like in the movies." "Fascinating," George replied. "You're quite the expert, young man." Hannah cleared her throat. "Tyler, we should be going. You have school tomorrow and I need to pick up your homework assignments." Tyler's face fell. "But I didn't see all the fossils yet." "Another time, perhaps," James suggested, looking to Hannah for confirmation. "We'll see," she said non-committally. "Thank you for lunch and the tour, but I still need time to think about all this." "Of course," George agreed readily. "Decisions like this shouldn't be rushed." As they prepared to leave, James pulled Hannah aside. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly. "Victoria Winters has been under investigation by the SEC for financial irregularities. The company is in trouble." Hannah stared at him. "What? How do you know this?" "We have connections in financial regulation, nothing that was publicly available when we researched you." he added hastily, seeing her expression. The point is, even if you hadn't lost your job yesterday, you might have lost it in the coming months anyway when the investigation becomes public. Is that part of your father's revenge too? Hannah asked sharply. James shook his head. No, the investigation began independently 6 months ago, but it does mean you have an opportunity to join a stable company instead of going down with a sinking ship. Before Hannah could respond, her phone rang. The screen showed Winters Financial. Excuse me, she said, stepping away to answer. Hello? Hannah, it's Victoria. The voice was tense, controlled. I've been reconsidering our conversation yesterday. If you're interested, I'd like to offer you your position back with a modest raise. Hannah's mind raced. The timing was too perfect. Why the sudden change of heart? A slight pause. Let's just say I've recognized your value to the company. The offer stands until the end of the day. Call me back with your decision. The line went dead. Hannah turned to find James watching her intently. Victoria just offered me my job back, she said. James's jaw tightened. Did she? You don't seem surprised. Word travels fast in Boston business circles, he replied evasively. Hannah suddenly understood. She knows I'm here, doesn't she? Someone told her I was meeting with you. George approached, having overheard the conversation. Victoria always did have an excellent intelligence network. This is all some kind of corporate warfare, isn't it? Hannah demanded. And somehow, I've ended up right in the middle of it. Neither Peterson denied it. Tyler returned to Hannah's side, sensing the tension. Mom, are you mad? Hannah forced a smile. No, honey, just confused. She looked at James directly. I need the truth. All of it. No more games or half-revelations. James nodded slowly. You're right. There's something we haven't told you. He exchanged a glance with his father. Something that changes everything. The silence in the room stretched taut as Hannah waited for James to continue. Tyler pressed against her side, sensing the tension despite not understanding its source. Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately, James suggested, glancing meaningfully at Tyler. Megan, would you mind showing young Tyler the rooftop garden? George asked. I believe there's an excellent view of the harbor from there, and if I'm not mistaken, there might be some ice cream in the break room freezer. Tyler looked up at Hannah questioningly. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. It's okay, sweetie. Go with Ms. Walsh. I'll be right here. Once Tyler had left with the cheerful Megan, Hannah crossed her arms. I'm listening. James gestured to the conference room chairs. You might want to sit down for this. I'll stand, thanks, Hannah replied firmly. George sighed heavily, leaning on his cane. The truth is, my dear, Victoria Winters didn't just steal business patents from me. She stole something far more precious. He paused, his eyes suddenly glistening with emotion. My family. Hannah frowned. What are you talking about? James took over, his voice carefully controlled. 23 years ago, my father and Victoria were more than business partners. They were engaged to be married. Victoria was your fiancée, Hannah gasped, looking at George in disbelief. The elderly man nodded sadly. We were young, ambitious, and very much in love, or so I thought. We founded our research company together, with equal shares. Victoria was brilliant, beautiful, and utterly ruthless, as I would soon discover. James continued. My father had developed several groundbreaking environmental technologies. Victoria saw their potential value before he fully did. She orchestrated a corporate takeover, while he was overseas presenting research, had him removed from the company, and patented his discoveries under her name. That's terrible, Hannah acknowledged. But what does this have to do with family? George's hands trembled slightly on his cane. Victoria was pregnant when she betrayed me. She never told me. I discovered it only years later, through a chance encounter with a former colleague. A chill ran down Hannah's spine as she began to understand. James is my son, George confirmed, though Victoria led him to believe his father was dead. She married a man named Richard Peterson, no relation to me, who adopted James legally. James's face was a mask of controlled emotion. I grew up as James Peterson, never knowing my biological father was alive. Victoria's husband died when I was 12, and she raised me alone after that. She never told me the truth. Hannah sank into a chair, the implications overwhelming her. How did you find out? Pure chance, George said. 15 years ago, I attended a technology conference. James was presenting his early work in sustainable energy, following in my footsteps without even knowing it. The moment I saw him, I knew he had his mother's coloring but my features, my mannerisms. James leaned against the conference table, his rigid posture betraying inner tension. I was 30 when George approached me privately after my presentation. He told me everything, showed me DNA evidence, photos, letters, proof of Victoria's deception. At first I didn't believe him, James admitted. I confronted my mother, expecting her to deny everything. Instead, she confirmed it all, claimed she'd done it to protect me from George's instability and to secure my future. So you reconciled with your father and started Peterson Innovations together, Hannah surmised. George smiled faintly. Not quite so simple, but eventually, yes. James had already founded his company independently, a testament to how genetics works, perhaps. I joined as an advisor once we'd established our relationship. And Victoria? Hannah asked. Never forgave either of us, James said flatly. She saw my relationship with George as the ultimate betrayal. She spent the last 15 years trying to undermine our company, spread rumors about our technologies, poach our employees. Hannah rubbed her temples, processing this soap opera-worthy revelation. So yesterday at the crosswalk wasn't about testing me. It was about Victoria seeing George, recognizing him, and then punishing me for helping him. Exactly, George confirmed. I'd gone to that neighborhood specifically hoping to observe Victoria's company operations. When I saw you help me, a stranger, at the risk of your job, I was impressed. When Victoria fired you for that simple act of kindness, it confirmed everything I believed about her character. But why offer me a job? Hannah pressed. Why involve me in your family drama at all? James and George exchanged glances. Initially, it was partly to irritate Victoria, James admitted. She values loyalty above all else, twisted loyalty that tolerates no kindness to her enemies. Taking on her discarded employee would be a pointed message. So I am just a pawn, Hannah said bitterly. You were, George corrected. But then we researched you more thoroughly. Your work history, your dedication to your son, your community volunteer work despite your busy schedule. You're exactly the kind of person we want at Peterson Innovations, family drama aside. Hannah stood abruptly. I appreciate your honesty, finally, but I'm not interested in being caught between warring factions of Boston's elite. Tyler and I deserve better than that. You're right, James said quietly. We've handled this poorly. But the job offer stands on its own merits regardless of the history between our families. The conference room door opened and Tyler bounded in, his face smeared with chocolate ice cream. Mom, they have a garden on the roof, and I saw boats in the harbor. Megan followed, smiling apologetically. Sorry about the ice cream explosion, we got a little excited. Hannah wiped Tyler's face with a napkin from the lunch table. It's fine. We were just leaving anyway. Hannah, please, George said, his voice suddenly frail. At least take the night to think about it. Whatever you decide, we'll respect your choice. Tyler looked up at Hannah. Are we coming back tomorrow? Mr. George said he'd show me more dinosaur bones. Hannah sighed, unable to resist her son's hopeful expression. We'll see, honey. James walked them to the elevator, maintaining a professional distance. For what it's worth, he said as they waited. This company is about more than my father's past with Victoria. We're doing important work here, work that makes a difference. Hannah met his gaze steadily. I believe that. But I need to make decisions based on what's best for Tyler and me, not what advances your family feud. Fair enough, James conceded, then hesitated. One last thing you should know. Victoria's offer to rehire you isn't what it seems. The SEC investigation is serious. She's trying to present a stable front by bringing back recently terminated employees. When the company goes down, you'd be collateral damage. The elevator arrived, and Hannah stepped in with Tyler. I'll take that under advisement. That evening, after Tyler was asleep, Hannah sat at her kitchen table with 2 business cards in front of her, Victoria's and James's. Her laptop displayed job listings, none particularly promising for her qualifications and needs. Her phone pinged with a text from Victoria. Need your decision by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Position will include 15% raise. Minutes later, another text arrived, this one from James. No pressure. Position remains open until you decide. P.S. Community Daycare Center has dinosaur-themed reading corner. Hannah smiled despite herself at James's transparent appeal to Tyler's interests. She had to admit, there was something genuine about both Petersons that contrasted sharply with Victoria's calculated coldness. The next morning, after dropping Tyler at school, Hannah made her decision. She called Victoria first. "I've been waiting," Victoria said by way of greeting. "I assume you're accepting my generous offer." "Actually, I'm declining," Hannah replied calmly, "but I wanted to thank you for the opportunity." Victoria's voice sharpened. "You're making a mistake. I know the Petersons approached you. Whatever they've offered, I'll match it. This isn't about money, Victoria. It's about values and how people are treated." "Don't be naive," Victoria snapped. "Business isn't about kindness. It's about winning. The Petersons will use you and discard you just as quickly." "Perhaps," Hannah allowed, "but at least they didn't fire me for helping an elderly man cross the street." Next, she called Peterson Innovations and asked for James. His assistant put her through immediately. "Hannah," James greeted her, a hint of surprise in his voice. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon." "I've made my decision," Hannah said. "I'd like to accept the position with 2 conditions. Name them." "First, I want a formal employment contract stating that my position is secure, regardless of any corporate rivalries or family dramas. My job performance alone determines my employment status." "Reasonable," James agreed readily. "And the second, no more using me as a pawn in your battle with Victoria. I'll do my job to the best of my ability, but I won't participate in corporate espionage or revenge plots." There was a brief pause before James replied, "Agreed. When can you start?" "Monday," Hannah said decisively. "That gives me time to get Tyler settled with the idea of a new routine." "Excellent. I'll have HR prepare your paperwork. And Hannah, thank you for giving us a chance." 6 months later, Hannah stood on the rooftop garden of Peterson Innovations, watching Tyler examine a butterfly that had landed on a flowering shrub. The community daycare center had organized a nature exploration day, and she'd taken her lunch break to join the activities. "He's thriving here," a voice observed beside her. James had appeared, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up in concession to the warm spring day. Hannah nodded, smiling as Tyler carefully photographed the butterfly with a child-friendly camera. "We both are. I never expected to find this kind of work-life balance." In the month since joining Peterson Innovations, Hannah had excelled in her role, already earning a promotion to Assistant Director of Community Outreach. The flexible hours allowed her to be present for Tyler's school events, and the on-site daycare eliminated the stressful morning rush. George had become something of a surrogate grandfather to Tyler, sharing his passion for paleontology and natural sciences. The elderly man's health had improved markedly with the regular stimulation of explaining dinosaur facts to an enthusiastic 6-year-old. "Victoria's company is officially under SEC receivership," James mentioned casually. "The investigation found extensive fraud." "I heard," Hannah replied. "Several of my former colleagues have applied for positions here." James raised an eyebrow. "Any you'd recommend?" "A few. I'll send you their resumes." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the children explore the garden under the teacher's supervision. "My father's birthday dinner is next weekend," James said finally. "He specifically requested that you and Tyler attend." Hannah smiled. "We wouldn't miss it." As Tyler ran over to show them his butterfly photographs, Hannah reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed since that rainy morning at the crosswalk. What had seemed like the worst day of her life had become the catalyst for something unexpectedly wonderful. Later that evening, as she tucked Tyler into bed, he asked sleepily, "Mom, are Mr. James and Mr. George our family now?" Hannah brushed the hair from his forehead, considering the question. "Not exactly, honey, but they're important people in our lives." "I like them," Tyler mumbled, already drifting towards sleep. "Mr. James doesn't smile much, but he's nice. And Mr. George knows everything about dinosaurs." "Yes, they are nice," Hannah agreed, turning on his dinosaur nightlight. As she closed Tyler's bedroom door, her phone lit up with a text from James. "Father insists on taking Tyler to the Natural History Museum this weekend. Says it's educational necessity. So I'm willing to chaperone if you'd like adult company. No pressure." Hannah smiled to herself as she typed her reply. "We'd like that. Both of us." She set down her phone, realizing that in helping an old man cross the street, she'd unknowingly crossed into a new life herself, one filled with unexpected possibilities and newfound connections that felt increasingly like the beginnings of something that could one day become a family.